My 25th birthday should have been a celebration, but instead, it became the day my entire world collapsed. I was sitting in my childhood home's kitchen surrounded by the familiar warmth of my family, or so I thought. The birthday cake sat untouched on the counter, its candles already blown out as my parents, Margaret and David, exchanged those loaded glances that had become increasingly frequent over the past few months. "Ethan," my mother began, her voice trembling in a way I'd never heard before. "There's something we need to tell you. Something we should have told you years ago." My father cleared his throat, his weathered hands fidgeting with the coffee mug that had been his constant companion for as long as I could remember. "Son, you're adopted." The words hit me like a physical blow. 25 years of my life and they were just now telling me? I felt the familiar kitchen walls closing in around me, the same walls that had witnessed my first steps, my homework struggles, my teenage rebellions. Everything I thought I knew about my identity crumbled in that single moment. "What do you mean, adopted?" I managed to croak out, though part of me already knew the answer. My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We adopted you when you were just 3 days old. We wanted to tell you, but the circumstances, they were complicated." That word, complicated, would haunt me for weeks to come. As I stared at the two people who had raised me, loved me, and shaped me into the man I'd become, I realized I didn't know them at all. More importantly, I didn't know myself. The rest of that birthday passed in a blur of awkward conversations and half-answered questions. My parents seemed reluctant to share details about my biological parents, claiming they knew very little. But their nervous energy told a different story. There were secrets here, buried deep, and I was determined to uncover them. That night, lying in my childhood bed, I made a decision that would change everything. I was going to find my birth parents no matter what it took. I had no idea that this simple decision would lead me down a path filled with deception, danger, and revelations that would shake me to my very core. 3 weeks after the revelation, I found myself sitting across from Claire Morrison, a private investigator who specialized in adoption cases. Her office was tucked away in a nondescript building in the city's downtown district, surrounded by the usual urban chaos of honking cars and bustling pedestrians. "Most adoption searches are straightforward," Claire explained, her fingers dancing across her keyboard as she pulled up various databases. "But yours, this is unusual." She had been searching for 2 hours, and her confident demeanor had gradually shifted to concern. Every database she accessed seemed to hit a dead end. My birth certificate showed I was born at Riverside General Hospital, but when she called to request records, they claimed no record of my birth existed. "It's like someone deliberately scrubbed your early history," Claire muttered, pushing her glasses up her nose. "I've seen this before, but only in cases involving witness protection or other sensitive situations." My heart pounded. What kind of sensitive situations? Before she could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the caller ID and frowned. "Excuse me, I need to take this." As she spoke in hushed tones, I caught fragments of the conversation. "Told you not to call me here?" And, "The client doesn't know." When she hung up, her face had gone pale. "Mr. Ethan, I think we need to pause this investigation for now." "What? Why?" She stood up abruptly, her hands shaking as she gathered the scattered papers from my file. "There are some cases that are better left alone. This might be one of them." I watched in disbelief as she shoved my documents into an envelope and handed it back to me. "I'm sorry, but I can't continue with this case. I'll refund your deposit." Walking out of her office, I felt more confused than ever. Who was that on the phone? And why did a simple adoption search suddenly feel dangerous? That evening, I called my parents demanding answers. But their responses were even more evasive than before. My father kept saying, "Some things are better left in the past, son," while my mother just cried. I was beginning to realize that my adoption wasn't just complicated, it was shrouded in secrets that someone desperately wanted to keep buried. Frustrated by the dead ends, I decided to take a different approach. I started visiting the places connected to my early life, beginning with Riverside General Hospital. The building was old, its brick facade weathered by decades of rain and wind. I walked through the maternity ward, hoping something might trigger a memory or provide a clue. That's where I met Naomi Chin, a nurse who had worked at the hospital for over 30 years. She was organizing files when I approached her, and something in her eyes shifted when I mentioned my name and birth date. "Ethan, you said Ethan?" she whispered, glancing around nervously. Born 25 years ago? My pulse quickened. Yes, do you remember something? She gestured for me to follow her to a quiet corner. I shouldn't be telling you this, but I remember that night. It was chaos. The woman who gave birth to you, she was terrified. She kept saying they would find her, that they would take you away. Who would take me away? Naomi's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. There were men in suits waiting outside the delivery room. They weren't family, I could tell. And after you were born, they spoke with the woman for a long time. She was crying, begging them for something. My blood ran cold. What happened to her? I don't know. She disappeared that same night and you were placed for adoption immediately. But here's the thing. She paused, looking around again. The adoption papers were already prepared. Like they knew exactly what was going to happen. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. I kept this all these years. I don't know why, but something told me it might be important someday. I unfolded the paper to find a phone number written in shaky handwriting, along with a single word, Ruby. She slipped this to me right before she left, Naomi explained. Said if anyone ever came looking for the baby, I should give them this. My hands trembled as I stared at the number. After 25 years, I finally had a real lead. But Naomi's next words chilled me to the bone. Be careful, Ethan. Those men, they weren't the kind of people you want to cross. And if they went through all this trouble to hide your birth, they won't be happy that you're looking for answers. I stared at the phone number for 3 days before working up the courage to call. When I finally did, the voice that answered was soft, older, and filled with a sadness that seemed to span decades. Hello, she said. Is this Ruby? I asked, my voice barely steady. There was a long pause. Who is this? My name is Ethan. I think you might know something about my birth mother. The silence stretched so long I thought she had hung up. Then I heard what sounded like a sob. Oh my God, she whispered. Grace's baby. You're Grace's baby. My heart hammered against my ribs. Grace? That's my mother's name. Can you meet me? Tonight? There's a coffee shop on Maple Street called The Grind. I'll be there at 8. The hours until 8 o'clock felt like an eternity. When I arrived at The Grind, I spotted her immediately. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and kind eyes that looked exactly like mine. She was sitting in a corner booth, clutching a cup of coffee with both hands. Ruby. I approached cautiously. She looked up and her face crumpled. You have her eyes. You have Grace's eyes. As I sat down across from her, she began to tell me a story that made my blood run cold. Grace hadn't been just any young woman. She had been a witness to something terrible. Something that powerful people would kill to keep secret. Your mother worked as a secretary for a law firm downtown, Ruby explained. Harrison, Blake and Associates. She was just 19, fresh out of high school, trying to make something of herself. That's when she stumbled upon files she wasn't supposed to see. What kind of files? Ruby's hands shook as she reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. It showed a young woman with dark hair and my exact eyes, standing next to a man in an expensive suit. This is your mother with Nathan Harrison, the senior partner. She trusted him, thought he was a good man. But Grace discovered that the firm was laundering money for some very dangerous people. When she tried to come forward, they threatened her. When she wouldn't back down, Ruby's voice broke. They told her they would kill her unless she disappeared. I felt the world spinning around me. So she went into hiding? For a while. But then she discovered she was pregnant with you. She thought maybe having a baby would change things, that they'd leave her alone. She was wrong. Ruby pulled out another photograph. This one of my mother holding a newborn baby. Me. The night you were born, they gave her an ultimatum. Give up the baby for adoption and disappear forever, or watch them kill you both. She chose to save your life. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too airless. My entire life had been built on a lie. And now I was learning that my very existence had put my mother in mortal danger. Where is she now? I asked, though I was terrified of the answer. Ruby's tears fell freely now. I don't know. She left you with the adoption agency and vanished. I never heard from her again. But as she spoke, I noticed something in her eyes, a flicker of deception. Ruby knew more than she was telling me, and I was determined to find out what. The next morning, I stood outside the imposing glass building that housed Harrison, Blake and Associates. The firm had grown substantially since my mother worked there, now occupying 3 floors of one of the city's most prestigious office buildings. Nathan Harrison's name was still on the letterhead, and according to my research, he was now the firm's managing partner. I had crafted a story about being a journalist researching a historical piece about the firm's early days. The receptionist, a polished woman named Sienna, led me to Harrison's office on the 20th floor. Nathan Harrison was in his 60s now, his hair silver and his suit impeccable. But when I mentioned Grace's name, I saw something flash in his eyes. Fear, maybe, or recognition. Grace Morrison, he repeated slowly. That name sounds familiar. She may have worked here briefly in the late 90s. I'm writing about the firm's early employees. I lied smoothly. She worked as a secretary, I believe. Harrison's fingers drummed against his mahogany desk. I'm afraid I don't remember much about her. It was a long time ago and we've had many employees over the years. But his body language told a different story. He was nervous, constantly glancing at his phone, and I noticed him press a button under his desk, likely calling security. Actually, I said, deciding to take a risk, I'm not really a journalist. I'm Grace's son. The blood drained from Harrison's face. For a moment he looked like he might collapse. That's impossible, he whispered. You can't be. I'm 25 years old. I was born at Riverside General Hospital. My mother worked for you and discovered something that made her life dangerous. Harrison stood up abruptly, walking to his window and staring out at the city below. You need to leave. Now. Not until you tell me what happened to my mother. He turned around and I was shocked to see tears in his eyes. Your mother was a good person. She didn't deserve what happened to her. What did happen to her? She discovered that we were handling financial transactions for the Castellano family. Not just legal work. Money laundering, hiding assets, facilitating payments for unsavory activities. My blood ran cold. The Castellanos were one of the most dangerous crime families in the region, known for their ruthless elimination of anyone who crossed them. Grace found the files by accident, Harrison continued. She was organizing documents for a court case and stumbled upon accounts that shouldn't have existed. When she asked me about them, I panicked. I told Vincent Castellano that we had a problem. And he decided to eliminate the problem. I thought they would just scare her, maybe offer her money to keep quiet. I never imagined. His voice trailed off. What happened the night I was born? Harrison's shoulders sagged. Vincent's men were at the hospital. They told Grace that if she ever surfaced again, if she ever tried to contact you or expose what she knew, they would kill both of you. The adoption was their idea. A way to ensure you'd be safe while removing her from the equation. So she's alive? I don't know. I swear to you I don't know. After that night she vanished completely. I've never heard from her since. As I left the building my mind raced. Vincent Castellano was still alive, still running his criminal empire. And if he discovered I was looking for my mother, both of our lives would be in danger. But I had come too far to turn back now. I was going to find Grace no matter what it cost me. My research into the Castellano family led me to a small Italian restaurant on the outskirts of town called Bella Vista. It was the kind of place that looked innocent enough from the outside but was rumored to be a front for Vincent Castellano's operations. I knew it was dangerous, but I needed to understand what I was up against. I sat at the bar, nursing a beer and listening to conversations around me. That's when I noticed her. A woman in her 30s with striking features and an aura of danger that seemed to follow her like a shadow. She was sitting alone in a corner booth, but every man in the restaurant kept glancing in her direction. You're not from around here, she said, suddenly appearing beside me at the bar. Just passing through, I replied, trying to sound casual. She studied me with intelligent dark eyes. I'm Maya. And you are? Ethan. Something flickered in her expression. Ethan. That's an interesting name. What brings you to Bella Vista? Before I could answer, a large man in an expensive suit approached us. Miss Castellano, your father is ready to see you. My blood turned to ice. Maya Castellano, Vincent's daughter. I had unknowingly walked into the lion's den. Actually, Maya said, her eyes never leaving mine, I think my father might be interested in meeting my new friend here. I wanted to run, but I was trapped. As Maya led me through the restaurant toward a private room in the back, I realized this might be my only chance to get answers about my mother. Vincent Castellano was smaller than I had imagined, but his presence filled the room. He was in his 70s now, his face weathered by decades of violence and corruption. When he looked at me, I felt like he could see straight through to my soul. "So," he said in a voice that was deceptively gentle, "you're Grace Morrison's boy." The fact that he knew who I was without being told confirmed my worst fears. They had been watching me probably since I started my investigation. "I'm looking for my mother," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Vincent smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Your mother made a choice 25 years ago. She chose your life over her own freedom. I suggest you honor that choice by walking away. I just want to know if she's alive." "Some questions are better left unanswered," Maya interjected, but I noticed something in her expression. Pity maybe, or understanding. Vincent leaned forward. "Your mother was a problem that needed to be solved. We solved it. She's gone and you're alive. That's all you need to know." "Gone doesn't mean dead," I pressed. The old man's eyes hardened. "Boy, you're playing with fire. Walk away now and you get to live your life. Keep digging and you'll end up like your mother." But as they escorted me out, Maya slipped something into my pocket. A small piece of paper with an address written on it. When I looked back, she was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Once I was safely away from the restaurant, I examined the paper. The address was for a small town about 3 hours north of the city. Below it, Maya had written 2 words: "She's alive." The address Maya had given me led to a tiny town called Millbrook, nestled in the mountains and surrounded by dense forests. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where strangers were noticed immediately, and where someone could disappear completely from the outside world. I found the house at the end of a gravel road, hidden behind a cluster of pine trees. It was small and modest, with a garden in the front and smoke curling from the chimney. For a moment, I sat in my car, paralyzed by the possibility that my mother might be just a few feet away. When I finally worked up the courage to knock, the door opened to reveal a woman in her mid-40s with graying hair and tired eyes. But those eyes, they were unmistakably mine. "Grace," I whispered. She stared at me for a long moment, and I watched as recognition dawned in her face. Her hand flew to her mouth and she began to cry. "Ethan. Oh my God, Ethan." We fell into each other's arms, and for the first time in my life, I felt complete. This was my mother, the woman who had given up everything to keep me safe. "You can't be here," she said through her tears. "It's not safe. They'll find you. I know about the Castellanos. I know what you witnessed." She pulled me inside, constantly glancing out the windows. The house was sparse but comfortable, clearly designed for someone who needed to be ready to run at a moment's notice. "I've been hiding here for 25 years, she explained. "Vincent's people check on me periodically, making sure I'm still here, still keeping quiet. But they told me if I ever tried to contact you." "Maya Castellano gave me your address." Grace's face went pale. "Vincent's daughter? Why would she help you?" "I don't know. But she seemed to want me to find you." As we talked, Grace filled in the missing pieces of my story. She told me about the fear she had lived with during her pregnancy, the impossible choice she had to make at the hospital, and the crushing loneliness of the past 25 years. "I used to drive to the city sometimes," she admitted. "I would sit outside your school watching you from a distance. I saw you graduate, saw you grow into a man. It was torture, but I couldn't stay away." Learning that my mother had been watching me all these years, that she had been so close yet unreachable, broke something inside me. But it also made me more determined than ever to find a way for us to be together. "We can't stay here," I said. "If Maya helped me find you, others might know where you are too." Grace nodded. "I've been preparing for this day for years. I have money saved, documents prepared. But Ethan, if we run together, there's no going back. Vincent will never stop hunting us. Then we need to find a way to stop him first." As we began planning our escape, neither of us noticed the black sedan that had been parked at the end of the road for the past hour, or the man inside it making a phone call. We had been planning for 3 days when Maya showed up at the house. I was shocked to see her, but Grace was terrified. "How did you find us?" Grace asked, her voice shaking. "I've known where you were for years," Maya replied. "My father has had people watching you, making sure you stayed hidden but alive." "Then why did you help Ethan find me?" Maya's face was conflicted. "Because I'm tired of living with my father's sins. Do you know what it's like growing up knowing your family destroys people's lives?" She explained that she had been working against her father's organization for years, secretly gathering evidence of their crimes. But she needed Grace's testimony to bring them down. The files you found 25 years ago, they were just the beginning, Maya said. My father's operation has grown exponentially. He's now connected to human trafficking, drug smuggling, and murder for hire. But the money laundering scheme you discovered is still the foundation of everything. Grace shook her head. I can't testify. The moment I surface, he'll kill us both. Not if we do this right, Maya insisted. I have contacts in the FBI. We can arrange for protection, new identities, a real life for both of you. As we discussed the plan, I found myself studying Maya more closely. She was beautiful, intelligent, and seemed genuinely committed to bringing down her father's empire. But something nagged at me, a feeling that things were too convenient, too perfect. That feeling proved prophetic when FBI agents surrounded the house that evening. But instead of arresting Vincent Castellano, they arrested my mother. Grace Morrison, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice and conspiracy to commit murder, the lead agent announced. I watched in horror as they handcuffed my mother. What's happening? She's the victim here. Maya stepped forward, her face cold and emotionless. I'm sorry, Ethan, but my father needed to eliminate loose ends. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Maya had never intended to help us. She had been working for her father all along, using me to find my mother so they could finally deal with her permanently. You see, Maya continued, my father has been planning this for years. He's been preparing evidence that your mother was actually working with the Castellanos, helping them launder money. Now that she's in custody, she'll either confess to crimes she didn't commit, or she'll have an accident in prison. As they dragged my mother away, she looked back at me with eyes full of love and desperation. Find the truth, Ethan. Find the real evidence. It's in Harrison's office. He kept copies of everything. Maya's smile was cold as she watched my world collapse around me. You can try to save her, but you'll fail. Just like she failed to protect you 25 years ago. But Maya had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated how far I would go to save my mother. And she had no idea that I had been recording our conversation with my phone. With my mother in federal custody and Maya's betrayal burning in my chest, I knew I had only one chance to save her. I needed to get into Harrison's office and find the evidence my mother had mentioned. But the building would be heavily secured and I had no idea how to break into a law firm. That's when I remembered Jude Martinez, my college roommate who had become a skilled hacker. If anyone could help me access Harrison's files, it would be him. You want me to hack into a major law firm's security system? Jude asked when I called him. Ethan, that's federal crime territory. They framed my mother for crimes she didn't commit, I explained. She's going to die in prison unless I find evidence to prove her innocence. Jude was quiet for a long moment. Hey, but we do this my way and we only have one shot. We spent the next 24 hours planning. Jude would remotely access the building's security systems while I physically entered Harrison's office. The plan was risky, but it was our only option. At 2 a.m., I stood outside the Harrison Blake and Associates building, wearing dark clothes and carrying a small backpack of tools Jude had provided. My heart pounded as I waited for his signal. Okay, Jude's voice crackled through my earpiece. Security cameras are looped, and I've disabled the alarms on the 20th floor. You have exactly 30 minutes before the system resets. I made my way to the service elevator, using a security card Jude had cloned from one of the building's maintenance staff. The ride to the 20th floor felt like an eternity. Harrison's office was exactly as I remembered it. Mahogany desk, wall of legal books, and a portrait of him with various city officials. But now I was looking for something specific. A safe or hidden compartment where he might keep sensitive documents. I found it behind a painting of the city skyline. A small wall safe that looked original to the building. Jude had prepared for this too, providing me with an electronic lockpick that could crack most standard safes. 20 minutes later, the safe opened with a satisfying click. Inside, I found dozens of files, but one immediately caught my attention. Castellano Family Financial Records 1995 to 2000. The file contained everything my mother had seen and more. Bank records, wire transfers, payments to judges and politicians, and detailed records of money laundering operations. But most importantly, it contained a letter from Vincent Castellano to Harrison, explicitly discussing their plan to frame my mother if she ever tried to expose them. I've got it, I whispered into my earpiece. Good, because you need to go. No. Security is about to The lights in the office suddenly blazed on. I spun around to find Nathan Harrison standing in the doorway, flanked by two large men in dark suits. "I had a feeling you'd come here eventually," Harrison said. "Vincent told me you were quite persistent." I clutched the file to my chest. "This evidence will exonerate my mother." "No, it won't. Because no one will ever see it." One of the men stepped forward and I saw the gun in his hand. After 25 years of secrets and lies, it was all going to end here in this office where it all began. But then I remembered the recording I had made of Maya's confession. I had uploaded it to a secure server before coming here tonight, with instructions to release it to the media if anything happened to me. "You can kill me," I said, "but the truth is already out there." I recorded Maya confessing to framing my mother. It's set to be released to every major news outlet in the country if I don't check in by morning. Harrison's face went white. "You're bluffing." "Try me." The standoff stretched for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Finally, Harrison made a gesture and his men lowered their weapons. "What do you want?" he asked. "My mother's freedom. And Vincent Castellano in prison where he belongs." The next morning, I walked into the FBI field office with Nathan Harrison by my side. He had agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for immunity and protection from the Castellano family. In his briefcase were 25 years' worth of evidence documenting Vincent's criminal empire. Special Agent Caroline Brooks reviewed the files with growing amazement. "This is enough to bring down the entire organization," she said. "But are you sure you want to do this? The Castellanos don't forget and they don't forgive." "My mother has been running for 25 years, I replied. "It's time to end this." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of depositions, witness statements, and media attention. The recordings I had made of Maya's confession were played on every news channel, and the public was outraged by the story of a young woman forced to give up her child to save his life. Vincent Castellano was arrested at his restaurant, along with dozens of his associates. Maya was charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice, but her cooperation with the investigation earned her a reduced sentence. The most emotional moment came when my mother was released from federal custody. We met at the same coffee shop where I had first spoken with Ruby, and this time we could finally be together without fear. "I'm sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry you had to grow up without me." "You saved my life," I replied. "You sacrificed everything to keep me safe." Margaret and David, my adoptive parents, were waiting for us at the coffee shop. I had been angry with them for keeping the truth from me, but now I understood they had been trying to protect me too. "We always knew this day might come," Margaret said. "We just wanted you to have a normal childhood." For the first time in 25 years, I felt like I had a complete family. Not just my biological mother, but the people who had raised me and loved me unconditionally. 6 months later, I testified at Vincent Castellano's trial. Looking him in the eye, I told the jury about the fear my mother had lived with, the years of separation we had endured, and the trauma his organization had inflicted on innocent people. Vincent was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As they led him away in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. "You think this is over?" he said. "Family is forever." But I wasn't afraid anymore. The truth had set us free and no amount of threats could change that. Today my mother lives in a small house near the lake, finally able to use her real name and live without fear. She works as a teacher, something she always wanted to do but never had the chance. I visit her every weekend and we're slowly building the relationship we never had. The Castellano organization was dismantled, but organized crime didn't disappear. However, dozens of their victims found justice, and their operations were significantly disrupted. Maya served 3 years in prison and was released on parole last month. She sent me a letter apologizing for her betrayal and explaining that she had been torn between loyalty to her family and doing what was right. I haven't decided whether to forgive her, but I understand that she, like my mother, was trapped in an impossible situation. Harrison received immunity in exchange for his cooperation, but his career was destroyed. He now works as a public defender trying to atone for his past mistakes. As for me, I've learned that identity isn't just about where you come from, it's about the choices you make and the people you choose to protect. I was adopted, yes, but I was also loved by 2 families who sacrificed everything for my safety and happiness. The truth they told me at 25 did shock me, but it also set me free. Free to love my mother, free to forgive my parents, and free to build a life based on honesty rather than secrets. Sometimes the most important journeys aren't about finding where you came from, but about discovering who you're meant to become.